Yes, we might. That's a fine with me. Are very not.
All right, guys. Good evening. I want to say thank you for coming out to our first inaugural PCC Pre-Law Society meeting. We hope that the information that we give tonight will be helpful and informative for you all. Before we begin, I'd like to open in a word of prayer, so if you'll join me. Dear Lord, thank you for bringing this group of people together tonight. Please bless our conversation and help the information to be informative and helpful, and let everything we do and say bring the glory to your name. We ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen. To begin our first meeting, I'd like to discuss a few goals that we have for the Pre-Law Society. A few weeks into last semester, I approached Dr. Reese about starting a club specifically for pre-law majors and those interested in pursuing a career in the field of law. I know that there's lots of different majors who are considering law school, so I thought it'd be great to be able to bring together all of those who are working towards a common goal. He was intrigued by the idea, so I formally submitted the proposal to student activities. After nearly 6 months of emails, meetings, discussions, more emails, more meetings, and more discussions with student activities, here we are. The main purpose of this club is to bring together a group of people who are working towards a common goal. Specifically for pre-law majors, the first time we're brought together as a group is for our pre-law seminar in our junior year, which is great, but for me, I really wish there would have been an opportunity for, as an underclassman, to meet upperclassmen who had already gone through the road that I was about to embark on. The main purpose of this, again, is to just provide an environment for dialogue regarding law school, LSAT, and all related things. We hope to, in the future, bring in speakers both from faculty here at PCC and as well as outside faculty who can give us a better look at what a career in law would look like or pursuing law school would entail. If you don't know me, my name is Will Teasma. I'm a pre-law major from Grand Rapids, Michigan. I wanted to pursue law school and a career in law for quite a while now. I'm not sure exactly what my career will look like. I know right now I'm super passionate about foster care and adoption and would love to work in family law in some capacity. For our first semester of leadership, student activities recommended that we instill our own leaders instead of bringing together as many people as we could to hold an election. So we did instill our own leaders. First of all, our club sponsor, Dr. Reese, is a staple faculty member here at PCC. He's known by all pre-law majors, and he has had his hand in the pre-law department pretty much since its beginning. His son also graduated from PCC and then later went to Liberty University School of Law to achieve his JD. When I proposed the idea to Dr. Reese, he suggested that I contact Elizabeth Radford to see if she would help serve in leadership to bring this vision that I had to fruition. Elizabeth is a senior pre-law major from Tennessee who is planning on attending Regent University School of Law in the fall. I know she's excited to share more information about that with you guys pretty soon. Our third club leader is Becca Michael. She's a sophomore criminal justice major and is one of many students who's not a pre-law major but is seriously considering going to law school. Becca will be fulfilling the law of clerk and will be handling many administrative tasks for us, for our club. I would also like to let you guys know that leadership for next semester and next school year has not been selected yet. So if you are interested in being a club leader, please let me know, let Dr. Reese know. You can also contact us on our Instagram page and we can give you more information about that. I would also like to just give you guys a little teaser for our next meeting. I would like to let you guys know, like I said, about our Instagram. We'll be giving you guys information regarding future meetings, also just giving you guys information regarding the LSAT and other law school related content. And there's also opportunities for member engagement. Like I said, if you guys have any questions or comments, this is probably the easiest way to reach our officers. And you can follow us at PCC_pre-law_society. Also, one thing that Dr. Reese wanted me to plug for you guys real quick, in case you weren't aware, is applying for your internship for this summer. I know I already have my internship lined up. I do need to go through the department and make sure that's all approved, but I think it should be good. But if you guys need internship ideas or you have an internship that you want to do for credit, talk to Dr. Reese, talk to Mrs. Thompson. They can help you guys make sure that you get credit for that. I'd also like to give you guys a little teaser about our next meeting, which will be on April 22nd by the one and only, the beloved Mr. Hunter Trout, who will be talking about the LSAT Specifically, he's going to talk about some strategies and techniques you can use for the LSAT. We all know right now we're kind of all focused on GPA, but LSAT is a super, super important part of your law school application. So don't forget about it. Start prepping as soon as you're able to, and I'm sure it'll pay off in the long run. Speaking of law school admissions, that's the topic of our panel tonight. Dr. Reese, Elizabeth, and I are going to be diving deeper into the details and specifics regarding law school, and I know I'm super excited to be able to pick the brain of Elizabeth, who's already completed the law school application process, and also talk to Dr. Reese, who has walked many, many people through the law school application process. So if you guys will welcome me, or help me in welcoming our panel tonight, Elizabeth and Dr. Reese. All right, thank you guys so much for taking the time coming out tonight. I'm really thankful.
Thank you for giving us the opportunity.
Elizabeth, the first question I wanted to ask you is, having finished all your coursework at PCC, is there one class that you can think of, or a few classes that were particularly helpful in preparing you for law school?
I think some of the classes that were extra helpful were actually some of Mr. Crocker's classes, because as a teacher, Mr. Crocker encourages you to look at both sides of whatever you're discussing, and I think that's a valuable skill to learn, to be able to even argue your own point better, is looking at it from how somebody else is looking from the other side of things. And so I think that was very valuable, and of course all the literature and writing classes at PCC. But even public speaking was helpful in learning to speak better, and then going into debate. Debate was huge.
Absolutely. Yeah, Dr. Reese.
If I can give a little perspective, first of all, thank you and congratulations for being a part of the inaugural meeting of the Pre-Law Society here at Pensacola Christian. You are in a special group, and we appreciate you taking time to share with us this evening. Having worked with our pre-law program pretty much since its inception, what a privilege that's been through all these years. We've developed and fine-tuned and adjusted our curriculum in part based on what we've heard from our graduates who've gone to law school and have come back and said, hey, you could tweak it here. It would be helpful if we had this. In fact, the pre-law seminar that was referred to earlier actually was a product of a student suggestion. And so we always look forward to hearing from students ideas that would improve our program. I tell folks it's one of the best kept secrets of the Gulf Coast, our pre-law program. Unlike some, which would tend to aim toward the law and the study of the law, our pre-law program rather is instead designed to give you the skills. And that's what Elizabeth was referring to. The skills to be able to think critically, then to be able to write well. And I think that's one of the superlatives of our program, by the Lord's grace. We hear this from our graduates in law schools across the way. The professors there are asking, where did you learn to write like this? And that's a compliment to a good, strong English program that we have here at Pensacola Christian. And ultimately, we give God the credit for that too. So some schools, though, they focus on law and the different aspects. And law schools actually sort of look askance at that, because they want you to learn law from their perspective and not to have to undo what you might have learned at the undergraduate level. So if you compare our program to some others, you may say, hey, we're not doing all of those criminal justice classes like they're doing. We're not doing all of those legal classes. We feel like we've actually found a formula that works very well, and we've heard very positive things from law schools on that. So courses that are a part of your curriculum, you may even wonder for a bit, why do I have to take that class? It turns out that each and every one plays a role. It's a block building process. And so while you're in the midst of that advanced grammar comp, hang in there, because there's a reason for your taking that class. It will make you a better writer, and 70% of law school is writing. So just to bounce off of what Elizabeth was saying, they are courses that make you think critically. Literature classes, history classes, Mr. Crocker's economics class, where you have to learn both sides so that you can then defend and know why you're convinced of what you are. That is a very positive part of our program. Thank you.
I'm super thankful for PCC reconsidering and revamping their course list for the pre-law program. I know that when I talked to some upperclassmen, they always told me that tax law or
Taxation, 2 semesters of it was a requirement for years.
Was a very tough course, or two very tough courses.
It was a GPA buster. Now, if you're going into tax law, that's great. Yeah. But here again, we surveyed law schools, we got feedback from, and we always do bench pressing. What's the current trend? And what we learned is that there is a shift away from that. And so in order for us to stay on the cutting edge, we made adjustments, which I really think improved our overall program and made life a little easier for our pre-law majors as a result.
Yeah, I'm taking debate and EM 360 right now, which are two super challenging classes that have really pushed me, and I'm really thankful for. I can tell that the skills that I'm learning in those two classes will be very, very applicable in law school. So, yeah. Elizabeth, another question I have for you was, as someone who's about to embark on the law school application process and you already finishing it, what was the hardest part of the application process, getting your whole portfolio together?
I feel like everybody could probably guess the first one, the LSAT, obviously.
That's the 400-pound gorilla in the room, isn't it?
That was one of the hardest parts, mostly, not exactly because of the information that you have to learn, not really learning information, but learning how to reason through everything. That was hard, but finding the time to study and practice that repeatedly, and I think that was the hard part about being at school and trying to study, but also worrying about my GPA and keeping up with classwork. So I think that was the hard part, but also—
Could I interrupt and ask, how long in advance of the actual sitting did you begin your study? Do you have a sense of
originally,
weeks, months?
I took my test in August. Originally, I started trying to hardcore study in January,
Wow.
but that was the semester that COVID hit.
Yeah.
And so things were already crazy. I was taking debate and a couple other hard classes that just involved a lot of time. And so I didn't get to study as much as I originally wished to. And so I really studied from June to August as every day as best as I could.
No social life, nothing, huh?
Yeah, I mean, I guess you could say COVID helped me out a little bit. There was nowhere to go, but I studied from June to August almost every day as best I could, and that's the majority of my studying. I had kind of studied this semester before. I would definitely recommend studying before that. I know they recommend a year in advance, and I think that's a good recommendation. I wish I had studied just a little bit more, honestly.
If only to open the book and to begin to look through practice tests to get a sense of the layout, so that the more you work with that, the more comfortable you will be. I'll tell you a quick anecdote and then we'll go on. There was a student in one of our legal connection meetings years ago, and I just sort of spontaneously called him to the platform. He had just finished his LSAT, had been accepted into a school in South Florida, and so I just did a little impromptu interview, and so I called him by name and said, "So, how long did you study in preparation for the LSAT?" And then right there in front of the whole crowd, he said, "I didn't." I should have scripted this out a little bit. He just went in there and took it on a whim, and it did well, but that's not the recommended formula. The good news, and I think I'm hearing this from Elizabeth and the others we've heard from already, and that is, this is a teachable test. You can improve your score, but you're not going to do it just by walking in and taking it on a whim. It takes discipline and effort. But like anything else in life, you'll appreciate it more if you'll put that time and effort into it. So a word to the wise, get that study underway early rather than late, and that will be to your benefit. Absolutely.
I think one thing you may want to think about, the LSAT's a marathon, it's not a sprint. You may think that, oh, I just need to get through a couple hours, but once you may be practicing little sections at a time, and you may be doing great in those, but then you go take a practice LSAT, and you're not getting as high of a score as you would think you would based off how you're doing on the smaller sections. So just building and building and getting ready for the marathon of putting your brain through that instead of just focusing on small sections at a time, putting them more together and taking more practice tests. I think that was something like near the end of my studying that I started trying to do more.
I think probably Mr. Hunter will build off of that next month. So tell your friends to come on out. That would be a very profitable evening for us.
Yeah. Was there one section that you had to put a lot more time into than the others, or were you kind of working through full practice sets throughout?
I mostly used Khan Academy, so I kind of went through what and it's what LSAT recommends using. So as you take your diagnostic test or however often you do the practice test, it looks at it and sees what you struggle with, and it gives you certain practice sets based off of that to do. So that's what I went through, and so they were throwing the ones at me that they're like, okay, you need to work on these, you need to work on these. And that's currently still free. I think it's due to COVID. I think they've extended the free link for Khan Academy, so I would definitely go look at that. It's KHAN, and like I said, LSAT recommends it. So that was a big help there, just knowing where I struggle, because you can look at where you're missing and still not quite understand it.
Right.
And so
They said the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and hoping for different results. So what you did was to take practice tests, then the histogram showed strong areas and areas to focus on, and so that's a very teachable test. You find out what your weak areas are, zone in on those, and then as mentioned here, that overall test is like a marathon. You don't practice for a marathon by running 23 miles the first day. You start out with those short distances, then you go to the half marathon, and then just before you rest, so you're ready to go the day of. And so these are some strategies I'm sure in future sessions we'll have a chance to massage and develop even more. But this has been informative. Thank you, Elizabeth.
So I know that everyone here has probably at least heard of the LSAT, and we all know that GPA is a super important part of your law school application. What are the other components that you have to pull together to send off to law schools before you get accepted?
The huge part is your personal statement. For Regent, I ended up having a personal statement, and then I had some other shorter essays that I had to put in there as well. The personal statement, they emphasize any law book, any law school book, recommendation book you read says these need to be perfect. And so what I did was I found two teachers, Dr. Reese and Mrs. Crocker, because at that time I was in creative writing, so Mrs. Crocker agreed to read it also. From two different aspects, because Mrs. Crocker was an English teacher, Dr. Reese was a history teacher, so she was kind of looking at my statement as, do I have unity throughout it, while he was looking at my arguments and such. But especially like the pre-law seminar, you learn kind of what the process should be. And the book that we used in pre-law seminar was really helpful in figuring out how I should structure my personal statement. But I went back and forth with both of them multiple times, like, okay, what's wrong with it now? What's wrong? And just so many revisions. So I think the key would be revising for that and just focusing on, like they said, having an emotional element of it, showing it how you've grown through whatever story you choose to tell. If you choose to tell a story, just showing it something you've learned in there.
So you didn't start the night before you sent the application off?
No. I actually got a good start with turning in Dr. Reese for pre-law seminar, and then I pulled it back out from my class files and worked on it more.
So to give us the big picture, if you were taking pre-law seminar in the fall of your junior year, when did you actually submit your applications?
I submitted my applications in...
Like the fall of your senior year, probably?
Yes, it was October. I believe it was around October. I know for a fact my application was in the first round of considerations. I believe I went to visit Regent in October, and they told me if you can get it done in a couple weeks, you'll be in the first round considerations. So that's what I would aim for. So
that personal statement was a year in the making. Not full time, but wow, that gives us a sense of how important it is. But and why is that? Because your personal statement is your interview. There are not a lot of law schools that even invite students to come visit anymore, especially with COVID and all. They might do some online interviews here and there, or choose one of their graduates that is in your area to interview you. But really, your personal statement is your interview. So you need to set yourself apart from the mushy middle that we talk about in other settings. And so in your case, do you mind sharing? Did you choose to tell a story about something that happened in your life? Or was it, this is why I want to go to law school, or what was your topic?
I kind of chose how being involved in Christian ministries throughout my life had kind of steered me towards the path of law, and just lessons that I had learned along the way, and that's how I shaped my personal statement. And just also showing putting in different things you've done that may look more impressive or look like you haven't wasted your time, putting things like that in there. I mentioned that I had some other smaller essays. When I went to visit Regent, that was one question I asked. Because on their application they said, you could either you address this in your personal statement or you can address it separately. And I learned that only 2 people probably sitting on the admissions panel will have looked at your personal statement and will know it completely through. There's other essays that the whole panel, at least for Regent, the whole panel will see that are smaller and things you want to pull from your personal statement but also add to that show why you want to be there and why you're a good candidate. And so everybody will have an opportunity to read those, so even focusing on those is important and just kind of showing the best parts of what you put in your personal statement and putting it to where everybody can see it.
Gotcha. Now, Dr. Reese, I know we've talked a little bit about pre-law seminar. Is that only available for pre-law majors?
It is not. That is open to any upper level student, and there are no prereqs on it either. So we've had non-pre-law majors take that class. And in my estimation, that's a very mature decision. Not a lot, but we have had folks do that because they really are intent on going to law school. And of course, like that, it's like the carpenter trying to build the house without a hammer.
Yeah.
That class, in a sense, gives you the tools to do what you're hearing Elizabeth talk about right now. Now, it's not an end-all. It doesn't do the work for you, but it acquaints you with the process, gives you the tools so that you can be more effective. And I will say this too, Will, if I may. The competitive process of law school admission is actually on the rise. We were in a phase where the number of applicants have been dropping, and it was a buyer's market. That's reversing as of this year. And that's not to discourage you. That's not to say, well, I'm going to throw in the towel before we even begin. No. But as it becomes more competitive, you can differentiate yourself by paying attention to these small details that we're hearing Elizabeth talk about here. So it's still your opportunity, but it's a little more competitive this year than it was last year. I also should say that there is a formal process where you have to pay a fee to get into the LSAC data bank with all of the information. You understand that you only have one letter of recommendation from each person, and then that gets sent in a file to all of the schools to which you request it be sent. So everything goes through that central clearinghouse, doesn't it? And there's a fee up front, but once it's done, it actually has worked very well. There's 200 plus law schools that are ABA approved, and they all work through that same organization. And they're all listed, and it makes it pretty streamlined once you've got your ducks in a row here.
Yeah. So Elizabeth, what schools did you decide to send your application to, and then also why did you decide on Regent?
I actually only sent my application to Regent. After I sent it in, after I had visited. So after I visited, I knew that that's just where God wanted me, and so I only sent it to them. I guess you could say I was hoping that I was right, and that was where the Lord was leading.
Put all your eggs in one basket here.
All the eggs in one basket. I guess you could say I've never been good with Plan B, but I knew that God wanted me to serve with my law degree in Christian liberties and helping churches and Christian ministries around the country, hopefully. And so I knew that no other school was going to be able to give me the training that I really needed. One thing about Regent is over and over I've heard them say, no matter whether it's Dean Martin or Dean Walton or any of the other professors or teachers I talked to while I was there, just about advancing the kingdom. And they really do have a Christian focus of training lawyers to go out and help other Christians. And so that was one thing that really drew me to Regent. And also just seeing that though they're a small school, they're pretty academically strong, and they seem to be competing well in law school competitions against these bigger name schools. And even some of their professors graduated from places like Harvard, and they've chosen to come to Regent to teach. And so I think that speaks well for the college that people who have one of these bigger name law school degrees have chosen Regent as their place to come and teach and invest. And so I knew that Regent was going to train me with the mindset that I needed to be able to do the work I wanted to do.
Yeah. Without getting too far into a tangent here, the law school reviews that are put out that rank the law schools and all, take those with a grain of salt. There's a fair bit of politics involved in that, and so just because a law school is not a tier 1 school doesn't mean it's a shabby operation by any means. And I think Regent is like top 5 in terms of faculty. So they're bringing in faculty from Harvard, Chicago, I mean big name schools all the way around. So you're getting a good quality education, but you're getting the Christian perspective too. And that's a wrestling match for some students. Do I go to the big name school, or do I go to the one that's going to reinforce and build my Christian worldview? There aren't too many in that category. Now you can choose some more secular law schools that would be on the conservative side. I would think Case Western, for example, would be an example. Notre Dame is not Christian, but they're going to be more Judeo-Christian in their orientation, and so that would be a safer call. But if you go to some of these other law schools, be prepared to have your faith challenged in a big way. And it's just the reality of it. You know, if the Lord calls you that direction, He'll equip you at the right time. But there's something to be said about that Christian worldview, and I do appreciate Regent's philosophy there. This is for kingdom's work. This is not for self-aggrandizement. This is not to build my own, you know, future, so to speak.
Yeah.
I think if you don't mind if I add, also, the bar is the bar. It doesn't matter what law school you graduated from, you're taking the same exam. And Regent students are doing well, very well with their bar passage rate. I believe it's up in the like 90%. I think it's upper 90s. So I think that's something to consider when you're looking at the schools, is how well their students are doing when they graduate. And I know that Regent has specific ways that they prepare you for the bar beyond just your normal coursework. And so I think that's very important.
Yeah, something unique that I noticed about Regent is a lot of, although they do have a very high bar passage percentage, they're also sending students across the country, which is pretty rare. Normally for a law school, most of the students will end up working in the state, but Regent has students passing the bar in many states, which is very impressive. Also, I wanted to add, their employment statistics are quite outstanding. They surprised me when they came in and visited this semester. I was very shocked to see their employment statistics and their internship placement were both very impressive for a lower, not a lower rank school, but a school.
They usually look at what percentage are in the legal field within 10 months of bar passage, and they have very impressive numbers there. So are we hearing then as a group that there are a couple of earmarks to be aware of? What is the bar passage rate at the law school you're considering? What is the job placement rate? All of those are factors that you need to pray over as you're looking for the Lord's direction on this.
Yeah.
I was thinking just as sort of a flip-flop, maybe the records could reflect that. It'd be great, anyone that comes to the Instagram signs up, could we maybe get that link to the law school numbers?
Yeah, absolutely.
If we get that out, see, this forum is about getting information in your hands. And any way we can do that, and I so appreciate Will's vision and Elizabeth's coming on board with all of this, and so on. So really, look for opportunities, and if you have questions and ideas of what we should look at in these sessions, let Will know. Let the folks here that are the officers know, because this is really your group and you'll get out of it what you put into it. So toward that end, maybe we can make sure they get that information. And there are numbers of other good sources to which you can turn, but that's a starting place for sure.
Dr. Reese, one question I want to ask you, which I didn't prepare you for, but
Okay.
do you know which schools students from PCC typically end up attending if they do go to law school? What are maybe the top 5? Or
The last I checked, we actually have 50 law schools out of the 200 to which our students have applied and been accepted. From Georgetown, which is tier 1, I think they're ranked 4th right now, all the way down through to, you know, some of the lower level schools. You can go to the Caribbean with a 148 LSAT, but you know, it's not going to be a top grade education, I don't suppose. But I would say that Regent and Liberty are the 2 major Christian law schools. We've actually had quite a few go to Notre Dame. I think through the years, I can think of at least 8 that have gone to Notre Dame. And then we've had a good cross section from Florida to Florida State, here in state. And that's another thought we'll have to develop in future sessions. Do I choose a law school in my home state if I want to practice there? Or do I choose the nationally recognized law school? What about networking? How does all of that fit in? And so we have one of our students, upperclassmen might remember Josh McCrosky. He wants to practice law here in Florida. He had an opportunity to go to Regent, a full-ride scholarship. He chose to go to U of F because he wants to practice here in Florida, and his networking would be built by that. Now, he'll tell you, a secular law school is a tough guy. And the Lord's given him grace. He got into a good church, and that's so crucial. Get into a church where you can get that spiritual vibrancy and support. But in his case, he chose a regional school that happens to be, you know, a top 25 law school anyway. So we've been blessed through the years to see our students gain admittance to really every tier, every level in most regions of the country.
Wow. That's super encouraging, especially knowing that I'm from Michigan, and nobody in Michigan has really heard of Pensacola.
Right.
So,
and that was even before we were accredited. We were still doing well. Now, there were a few instances where in Maine, one of our fellows sitting for the bar actually had to get a dispensation to sit for the bar in Maine because we were not accredited at that time. And he's full partner. He's actually argued before the Supreme Court of Maine. So they made a good call to allow him to take the test. That's my point. But with accreditation, that's really eased off some of those pressures too.
Okay, Elizabeth, the last question I had for you was, having finished your time at PCC, what is one thing that you wish you would have known as a freshman
Mm-hmm.
or a lower classman?
I think I wish I would have known to breathe more. You are stressing all the time. You're trying to get that grade, you're trying to get everything in because you know you need to keep up with it. And to be honest, every year you need to be pushing. There's not a year you can slack off, otherwise your GPA is not going to be where you need it to be. But I think you need to remember at times, why are you here? And if the Lord has truly called you here and called you to go to law school, then He's going to make a way, whether you make that grade or you fail that test or whatever happens, He's going to make a way no matter what. If you're called to law school, He's going to provide the funds. Where He guides, He provides. And I think I know that I was told not to stress all along, but I think really just if I would have grabbed onto that concept even more freshman year and just kept focusing on He's going to provide. If I'm really called to this, He's going to provide. And so I think breathing and focusing, trusting in the Lord would be a big key.
Now, as an advisor, let me jump in and throw the other side in. I wish some of my freshmen did stress a little more. They're a little too lackadaisical, just coasting on through. But I appreciate what Elizabeth is saying. There's balance to all things. And you can, be so myopic in your focus and all that you miss other opportunities of which college is. College is about growing you as a person, not just academically. So take those opportunities, some of which actually will look good on an application anyway. If you get into leadership in a group like this, or in your collegian, that all looks very impressive, and you're giving back to your colleagues. You're not just taking in like the Dead Sea. Now you're making a difference in your attending time. And that's very sage advice, it really is.
All right, so for our last few minutes that we have together before we have to wrap up at around 45, we wanted to open up the floor. If you guys have any questions for Elizabeth or Dr. Reese, please feel free to ask them if you have any. Yeah.
Yeah, I had a question, if you don't mind, just kind of giving you a background, or give us a background of your GPA or your LSAT score. Do you mind sharing that with us?
No, I got a 162 on the LSAT, and that was taking the LSAT Flex, which I was, for those of you who may not realize, during COVID they stopped giving in-person LSAT, which was a little daunting. So I was worried that I'd get to like my application process and they'd be like, oh, she only took the Flex. But they were actually, it seemed like almost more impressed slightly by that I still got that score with the Flex.
Can you tell the audience what 161 is percentile-wise?
When I took it, I got 162, and I was in the 84th percentile. So that means, huge. Yeah. And then I had like a little back and forth about my GPA because they want your universal GPA, but then LSAC was showing my GPA as like higher than my universal GPA. So I believe on my application it was like a 3.95 or something like
Not
that.
too shabby.
It was in the upper 90s or thereabout. But between the two of those, I was able to get into the honors program and get my full ride at Regent, and so, they were actually, between the two, was a little higher than what Regent actually requires for the honors program, so.
If you are north of 160 on your LSAT, you've got scholarship money waiting for you at any law school, virtually. And you'll get full ride offers at a number of law schools. We had one of our students get a 161 and was offered a full ride at a California law school, but because the cost of living was so high, he chose instead to take the full ride at Regent, and he's now practicing law in Lebanon. So it's interesting how it varies from state to state. You do have to factor in cost of living. Regent is more expensive than Liberty because Regent is in a big metropolitan area. Liberty is out on a mountainside someplace, and your cost of rent is lower. I'm just being pragmatic about it. And so I tell students, choose the law school that will offer you the most scholarship money that will give you the best education. And so Regent is not for everyone. Liberty is not for everyone. You have to pray intelligently about it. But these numbers you're hearing represent a lot of effort, a lot of sweat, blood, and tears, and the Lord gets the glory for it. That doesn't mean you have to have a 395 to get into law school, by any means. My son wouldn't mind my sharing it, I'm sure. I haven't asked him. But he was doing well in his studies until he met his girlfriend. And then things sort of slacked off. And so his GPA, he was a history major, not intending at that point to go to law school, actually. But his tailed off there the last year. He still let it slide some. It was still reasonable. It was a good solid, well above 3.0. But it was not what it could have been. But he still got a very generous scholarship because he did reasonably well in his LSAT as well. So there's hope, Trevor, no matter wherever we are. But the point is, if I can speak to a freshman, you've got the whole road in front of you. And it's easier to move your GPA now than your last semester. Because if you're sitting on a 2.65 in your last semester, I'm going to get all A's, it's going to bump it up to a 2.75. And that's about it, because it's 1/8 of the pool. But if you work now and get it high and then move it higher, or if you have a bad, and last year with COVID, it would be altogether appropriate on an application to indicate why your scores were lower that 1 year and explain those kinds of circumstances when they come up. That's altogether fine.
Also, I know, I believe LSAT was gonna send notes with applications that, hey, they were in school during the COVID semester, and just remind law schools. If you really want to know where you stand amongst applicants, you can go. I don't know if you can access it before you actually sign up and pay the fees to get into the LSAT assembly and everything, but they have all the schools, and you can click on and look at it and see, okay, here's my GPA, here's my LSAT score, how many other applicants have higher than me, or I forget what year they have listed, but like I think they keep updating it, and you can kind of see like, okay, this many applicants have applied to have better scores than me, this many have been accepted, and just see where you stand, and they have it all listed out, and just even looking at the mean or medians of the LSAT scores and GPAs for each listed school. A lot of, like, I believe lawschoolnumbers.com has that information as well, and that kind of helps you judge how you compare to other applicants.
Law school numbers can be a little bit dated, so if you are looking for super up-to-date information, if you Google the school and then type in 509 report after, the first link will be this super consolidated form with the school's 25th median and 75th percentile for LSAT and GPA. Also has scholarship information about what percentage of students got scholarships, how much those scholarships were. Super, super helpful just to see if you would have a shot at a certain law school.
And so the general theory or strategy is have a reach law school that is above what your numbers show you would get into, have a safety net school, and then aim at several in the middle. In Elizabeth's case, and I've heard others do the same thing, they put their eggs in one basket, they really felt compelled, this is what the Lord has for me, and if he shuts that door, then I'll have to move from there. But in most instances, you're going to go for the reach school and have the safety school, and then those that, well, I'm competitive here. And remember this, just because you're below the 50th percentile in that school doesn't mean you won't get in, because 50% that get in are below that number. But your odds are better if you're on the upside of that. Yeah, good question.
We have a few more minutes. Does anyone else have any questions? Yeah, go ahead.
As a history major, what advantages and disadvantages do I have on the local law school compared to, let's say, a pre-law who's focused on that one specific thing?
You'll be taking more history classes. I think that generally helps with critical reading skills, and there's the writing component. But if I could urge you to take one extra class, it would be advanced grammar comp. That's going to be your best bang for your buck to get toward law school. My son happened to have a business minor, and that helped him because he took some of the business classes. And if you choose a minor, we need to address that along the way too. How much does a minor help? Is it a minor point or is it a major part there? For most, it's not necessary. If you have these kinds of numbers, you don't need a minor. But if maybe you struggle on the academic side, but you want to show that you're diverse and have a multitude of areas of interest, a minor, I have one advisee who's doing music. That's a tough minor, but he's excelling. He's doing well, and that looks great on an application vita. I will say though, if you can take business law, then you can do the internship. And those are some of the best 3 credit hours you can earn. You should get the good grade if you just follow the directions, and that really helps set you apart from the other applicants who haven't done an internship. That internship, by the way, is an HI number class. So it's not restricted to the pre-law majors. Anyone that has business law can take that class. So it's a great question.
Yeah. Right. What are some other interterm classes that we can take to get us further ahead?
Well, you can do interterm or summer classes for that matter. Interterm classes, it would be hard to do an internship in the interterm. You could do it because it's 120 credit hours and 120 contact hours for 3 credit hours of class credit. And that means 3 40-hour weeks. Can you fit that into an interterm? Yes, but it's basically wall to wall. So we recommend the internship for the summer. But any of the courses you could pick up over interterm that would be your gen ed type classes, even to pick up an extra Bible so that your last semester you don't have to take Bible, to free things up. Or the semester you're doing debate, you got a busy run coming, debate and advanced grammar comp the same semester. So look ahead and say, if I take government now, I won't have to plug that in and have it on top of everything else. Get the language out of the way your sophomore year. Don't punt to your junior year. Get the language squared away. Related questions: Latin, Spanish, French, any advantage one way or the other as students? What do you all think?
I took Spanish because I had a lot of experience with Spanish.
That's a good call.
So-
And likewise.
I'm actually a Spanish minor,
Oh.
and I don't know if
Wow.
that helped me on my application at all, but the dean of Regent Law School, he actually would, he used to be the Chief Justice for the North Carolina Supreme Court, and at some point in his career, he would actually visited Barcelona, Spain, as part of a panel or part of a summit. And so I guess that I got to have a cool moment when I met him about my dad was sure to plug the whole Spanish thing.
There you
But
go.
other than that, I don't know if it actually helped me, but yeah.
And if you are just on the ropes and don't know which direction to go, Latin has the advantage in that you'll run into a fair bit of Latin in law school. Now, the way you may learn to pronounce it here might vary from what you learn in law school. And the cardinal rule is however your law professor pronounces it, that's the right way. You don't try to counter on it. But I just put in that plug for Latin. If you don't know one language or another, that's going to be to your advantage. If
I would say I don't think Latin was available when we started.
there was a hiatus where we didn't have an instructor, but it's back online. And so you raised a good point. But if you're going into a community like Miami, Spanish is a great advantage. Absolutely. Yep.
All right, we have time for maybe one more question if anybody has one.
Good. That's some good questions.
I
Last
think there's
one.
one. If I can remember it, I'll get back to you on that. But I'll
Okay.
let somebody else answer.
Anybody else? No? Okay, you can come ask us after.
I remember now.
Oh, go for it, yeah.
Debates. You said it was a struggle. Could you kind of prepare us a little bit for what that's like?
So the hardest part about debate is the sheer amount of time it takes to be thoroughly prepared. Also, it's like nothing you've ever done before. You've been time pressed before in speeches to get the information done, or maybe one of those people that you trying to stretch it out. Debate, to get your argument in, you have to get through it so fast, and just being able to do that. Also, we went home, we were doing it on WebEx, so that added a level of difficulty. But I think debate would definitely be, if you could do that with a lesser load that semester, that would help. Because it takes a lot of time, it's a lot of research, and so that would be my recommendation for debate. It's just kind of lighten your load that semester. Even if I know a lot of people try to lighten their load senior year, but even if you have to do more senior year, and that way that semester you could be lighter, that would be my recommendation. Especially because, like I said, I was trying to study for the LSAT at the same time. That was rough. And so if you can try to, I know Dr. Reese had recommended to me, if you can try to lighten your load the semester before you're trying to study for LSAT, that helps too.
Yeah. If I can share Dr. David Gibbs' account, when you speak before the Supreme Court, you're given 30 minutes for those oral arguments. And at 5 minutes, I think it's a yellow light that comes on. And at the 1 minute mark, it begins to blink. And when it turns red, you better stop within 30 seconds or you're writing a check for $6,000 a minute. So this is why you have to learn to be on time and not sound rushed. And that's what debate is about. And one other story some have heard me share, one of our pre-law majors, Catherine McMorris Rogers, was so mortified about the idea of having to take debate, she actually thought about changing out of pre-law. My sister was her roommate. She said, who knows, the Lord may call you into politics one day. And Catherine McMorris Rogers is the 5th District of Washington State representative in D.C., has been there since 2006. And she told me in one of my visits to D.C., she still hates to talk in front of people. She does not like to talk in public, but that debate class was a game changer for her. So cherish it, hold on to it, savor the flavor. Even though it is time consuming, it really is preparing you for future work, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm in a debate right now, and it's so different from every other speech class. It's almost like they aren't grading you on your speech, but on your arguments and what you prepare beforehand. So it's just different, but I've enjoyed it a lot. It's been really fun, really practical for sure for law school. Yeah, thank you guys for coming out. That's all we have time for tonight. Again, follow us on Instagram for updates. Message us if you have any suggestions, and we'll see you guys hopefully on the 22nd. Thank you guys for coming out.
Be here or be nowhere. Thank you much.